Hello, and thanks for joining us today. Today, we are going to give you the actual blueprint for entrepreneurship and for personal growth from somebody that's built multiple eight figures and can really lay out the exact roadmap for you to successfully be able to do the same thing. So with us today is Jeff Lerner. Now, he's actually went from a jazz musician to generating over $100 million in online sales. So after multiple failed ventures and $500,000 in debt, he actually discovered that digital businesses could actually be successful. And he used those to be able to pay off his debt in 18 months and built multiple eight-figure companies, twice landing on the Inc. 5000. His journey actually inspired him to educate others, leading to the creation of ENTRE Institute, one of the fastest growing entrepreneur education platforms with over 250,000 students, and Entresoft, a top small business software suite as well. Jeff's actually the author of Unlock Your Potential, from Penguin Random House in 2022 was released, and he's a Wall Street Journal and Publishers Weekly bestseller, and the host of Unlock Your Potential, a top 1.5% global podcast featuring leading entrepreneurs, authors, and thought leaders. His message revolves around the 3 P's of success: physical, personal, and professional, helping people reshape their lives through entrepreneurship. Now, he's also a sought-after speaker and content creator as well, and he continues to expand his reach through speaking engagements, media appearances, and digital content. He's also a devoted husband and father of 4, crediting much of his success to his marriage. Despite his busy schedule, he still plays the piano for an hour daily. I hope he doesn't see this piano behind me because he will realize I'm a horrible piano player and he's phenomenal. Jeff, what's up, man? Thanks for joining us today.
Oh, I'm grateful to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you've done some really cool stuff. I mean, I got to start at the beginning. Like, how do you get from jazz musician to where you are now to building multiple 8-figure businesses?
Well, I mean, a really good incentive to go out and do things that make money is to be as broke as you can get being a jazz pianist. I'll put it that way. Like, pick a profession that's going to put you in a financial ditch, and it becomes great fuel to get out of the financial ditch. But no, in all seriousness, I'll say this to kind of sum up the answer to multiple questions in that one. My big thing from an early age was I was born to very well-to-do parents, very successful, hardworking parents. My dad was a money manager who managed money for high net worth individuals and institutions. And my mom was an attorney. She was a partner at a Big 5 law firm, or became one, during my childhood. So they were and they were self-made. They weren't born into any wealth or opportunity. My mom worked 2 jobs to put herself through business school and law school and undergrad. And they just were like American dream go-getter people that did awesome. And that was my model. And I was an only child. So I was surrounded by what's possible in America, growing up. And we weren't they didn't own an island or anything, but we had enough money that I went to a private school where I was around people that had a lot of money, even way more than us. And so I grew up without that financial stress that I think almost is definitional to a lot of people's life experience. And I didn't have that in childhood. And so paradoxically, I came to understand how deeply, all the different ways you can be deeply unhappy, even if money's not a concern. Because I was a really moody kid and had I got called in the counselor's office a bunch as a teenager, and they were worried about me. Is he going to make it? It was just money doesn't make you happy. And that was my early childhood experience. And so, I think a lot of people come through high school and it's all about what job am I going to get? What, student loans am I going to get? And what's my sort of finance roadmap of my life going to be? How am I going to make something of myself? How am I going to make my parents proud? What am I going to do? And da-da-da. And I was just how do I live a life that I can actually wake up and look forward to every day? That was my question. And none of the conventional playbook appealed to me at all. I had 2 summer jobs when I was 16 years old, both of which simply taught me that I'm profoundly psychologically unemployable and unsuited to work for anyone. And so, especially someone that I don't esteem as someone that ought to be presiding over me. I was kind of a cocky kid, maybe. And it's you're not smart enough to be my boss or whatever. And so for me at 16, I dropped out of high school and I told my parents, and this in hindsight, I'm hearing myself say this and it's like, wow, this sounds really spoiled. I dropped out of high school and I was like, I'm not going to college. I'm not getting a job. I'm going to be a musician. And they were like, okay, well, we're not going to support you after you turn 18. That was the deal. You know that. You're kind of on your own. We'll help you go to college if you want, but sounds like you're out on that deal. So if you're going to drop out of high school and be a musician, like, let me tell you about the bed you're making that you're going to end up sleeping in for the rest of your life. And they said, but if you decide that's what you want to do, well, we're not going to drive you to school every day and sit there and make sure you go in. So I dropped out of high school, I bought a book. I actually learned to play piano out of a book. I bought a book called the Jazz Piano Book. And I just sat at home all day, every day, teaching myself chords and music theory. And it was all, and I had this sort of like viewpoint of like, and to be honest, I was kind of depressed. And this is probably going to get me in hot water for saying this. There's a certain luxury in being depressed where like you're not attaching a lot of value to a lot of things that other people do. You're kind of like, what's the point of any of it? And so then, taken to its extreme, depression is just the experience of feeling like you have nothing to lose. So I was kind of a depressed teen and I'm like, well, I don't want any of this crap anyways. So I'm just going to try to find a life I can be happy in. And a life that I can be happy in came to mean a life that I can truly be myself. I want to discover who I am and I want to do something in the world that's as unique as my fingerprints, because honestly, otherwise, what's the point? And Camus, the great existential philosopher, actually did say that the only serious philosophical question is suicide. Because if you're gonna choose to be here, then you surrender to the absurdity of the place where you choose to be, or you can opt out. But there's no logic in surrendering to the absurdity of the place where you choose to be, because you forego your choice to opt out, but then spending all your time complaining that it's absurd. You knew that the day you decided to stay here, right? And if you didn't know that, go outside. You'll be reminded, like, this is a ridiculous place that we inhabit. So if you're going to be here, stop complaining. Or if you're going to complain, go away. And that's a harsh way to counsel someone, but that was Camus' viewpoint, and that made a lot of sense to me as a teenager. I was like, well, I want to be here, so I'm just gonna like play the game to try to figure out what happiness and fulfillment look like. Because I wasn't going to be a slave to money, because I had grown up with it and I already knew that it wasn't the point. And so that's the setup of how I became a jazz musician. It's also the setup of how I got my ass kicked as a jazz musician and realized that, okay, even if money's not the point, it's still a pretty significant piece of the equation. And that's why I went into entrepreneurship, is because I just wanted a life that I was never going to be able to afford as a musician. And I'll stop there. There's so much more to the story, but hopefully I answered your question.
Yeah, I love that. And along that path, you accumulated a lot of debt, paid it off in a very short period of time. So how did you make that happen? I mean, a lot of people, as you know, try to succeed online and they never accomplish even a fraction of what you did. So how did you go from really knowing nothing about online entrepreneurship to then building multiple 8 figures, to accumulating the knowledge you needed to build multiple 8 figures in that space?
Yeah, so I was very fortunate that in 2008, I was 29. As you said, I was $495,000 in debt. I had tried opening a couple franchise restaurants. And if anybody's wondering, how the heck did a derelict jazz musician even get the capital to open franchise restaurants? And it's like, I actually think it was an achievement to get $500,000 in debt when I'd never made more than like $50,000 or $60,000 a year. And it was because it was 2007. The banks were insane. They would loan money to anybody with a pulse and a one-sheet business plan, right? That was the bubble that led to the Great Recession in 2007, 2008, the big collapse. So I just, wrong place, right time, so to speak, was able to convince a bank to give me 2 SBA loans to open franchise restaurants back in 2006, 2007, even though I had no real business experience. And that's how I ended up in all that debt. And again, I would say debt and depression, 2 things that set you free to take risks you never would otherwise. And so with $500,000 in debt as a piano player, going out to play one extra gig and make an extra $100 or $200 wasn't going to do anything for my life when you have $500,000 in debt and you're hiding from creditors. And I had, real estate investment trusts. My landlords at the two restaurants were both REITs. So I'm getting hounded by big corporate lawyers, and I'm defaulting on SBA guaranteed loans. And when you default on an SBA loan, it's not the bank you have to worry about. The bank just cashes in their insurance policy with the government. It's the U.S. Treasury actually becomes your creditor. And so I'm getting hounded by the Treasury, and I'm getting hounded by a bunch of corporate lawyers for the defaulted leases. And I just went into hiding. I started operating under I modified the spelling of my last name and was like, if I'm going to make a life here, if I'm going to dig out of this, I'm going to have to kind of go extreme. And so I moved in with my estranged wife's parents. She was in the process of separating and divorcing me, but her parents still took pity and let me live there. And I just went totally balls to the wall. I bought a $395 course on affiliate marketing. It was sold by a platform, a company called Carbon Copy Pro, that was built by this professional affiliate marketer who would kind of give you everything that he did and you could carbon copy it, hence Carbon Copy Pro. And it was good training. And the reality in 2008, it was kind of like the Wild West. You could find a niche, you could strike gold, and you could get some traction really fast. But I'm not going to say, oh, it was easy. I mean, there were 40,000 members of that affiliate platform, and they had a leaderboard where people published their earnings, their affiliate commissions. And after about 6 months, I was number 3 out of 40,000. So I was working really, really hard, and I was a quick study. Now, if somebody said a quick study at what did I do different maybe than 39,997 other people to be number 3? I would say, first of all, in addition to being a musician, I'd been an actor. I studied theater in college. And so I've always been pretty good on camera. Like I went to Best Buy, I bought a little video. This was before phones had cameras, but I bought a camera. And I started setting up in my soon-to-be ex-wife's parents' backyard during the day when they were at work. And I started shooting a ton of videos, just like videos about what I was learning and sharing. And I got really excited about the digital economy and this new emerging entrepreneurial space that, a lot of what I would say is, I accumulated $495,000 in debt as an undercapitalized brick and mortar entrepreneur. Now let me tell you about this thing called internet entrepreneurship, where there's no such thing as being undercapitalized. There's no such thing as ending up $500,000 in debt, because it's the internet, and it has leverage, and it has frictionless scaling, and it has automation, and it has all these, a lot of the things you'd say about AI, you were sort of saying an early version about the internet at the time. And I was on fire because I found a way that I could continue trying to be an entrepreneur, even though my financial situation prevented me from doing anything out there in the physical world. And so I would say I got really good at not good. I got really excited about personal branding and cultivating a unique message and becoming a really refined, powerful deliverer of that message. At the end of the day, like, people respond to people. And when you come across someone that has something to say and says it well, that's a skill that never goes out of date. And so that's one thing I did. I also got really obsessed with the science of direct response marketing and direct response copywriting. And I studied the greats. I learned a lot from Dan Kennedy. I went back and studied, Gary Halbert, and who's the guy that wrote Breakthrough Advertising? Eugene. I keep wanting to say Eugene O'Neill, but that's the Iceman Cometh, different Eugene Schwartz, I think. But anyway, I got real into copywriting and behavioral psychology and the art of persuasion, and how to get people to do stuff through words and design. And I guess to sum it all up, it's affiliate marketing. So the thing about affiliate marketing is you're promoting the same products as 1,000 other people or 10,000 other people. There's nothing unique. There's nothing differentiating in the product you're promoting. It's all in the marketing. And I got really good at messaging, and I got really good at persuasion. And then, I guess the final piece was I did something, and this is probably the biggest takeaway of the whole story. I did something at the time that nobody else was doing, or even when I told them about it, they weren't willing to do it. And the standard formula at the time and the materials I was given to carbon copy were name and email opt-ins, like a typical opt-in form. You have a name and an email address. I put phone number on the form, and everybody said, don't ask for phone numbers. You'll either get a bunch of fake numbers and or your conversions will go down because people just don't want to give up their phone numbers. So I put on my offer, on my funnel, on the very first page, I put VIP access phone number. So, I didn't even define what that meant, but I got a certain percentage of people that would put their phone number in the opt-in to see what VIP access meant. And as soon as they did, I'd call them up. And whatever I was promoting on the back end of the funnels, I got really, really good at having discovery conversations. And, basically my conversions were probably 2 to 3 times better than anybody else in the whole program because I was capturing as many phone numbers as I could, and I was actually willing to get on the phones and talk to people. Imagine that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I love the story and what you've done and how you've kind of got to where you got to that point. Fast forward to where you are today. So you've got this thing that I think is interesting called life design, and it really has to do with like personal growth and then entrepreneurship. So can you tell me a little bit more about that philosophy?
Yeah. So remember, I grew up with money, and that gives me, I think, a really unique vantage point, because here's the thing. Most people that grow up with money, they go into the industries that they grew up around. They become lawyers. They become investment bankers. Most of my high school buddies had, summer internships at Merrill Lynch or Goldman Sachs or whatever law firm they were going to, go try to get into after law school. And so you end up, there's not a lot of information exchange in the world of like, let's say wealthy people speaking truth about, and this, maybe it's different now because the internet, everybody's talking about everything, but like this, my vantage point was like, I know what it's like to have money, and I know what it's like to not have money because I was also a poor jazz musician all through my 20s. So I have this unique life experience to kind of juxtapose not just having money versus not having money, but being around the culture of wealthy people versus being around the culture of very non-wealthy people, such as jazz musicians. And how do they think differently about money and life and being a consumer and all this stuff? And also, like, I had a pretty good grounding in how money works. And so I think I was just probably a little earlier than most on understanding where the world was headed, and certainly where we are now, which is that, I'll say some things that, depending where people are in terms of eyes open to the zeitgeist, they may or may not, dispute. But like, I think now there's an emerging understanding that actually being an entrepreneur is less risky than being an employee. Because in the modern world, there's 160 million employees in this country. Only roughly 6 million of them will ever achieve $1 million net worth through their employment. So what's that, 4%? 96%, 24 out of every 25 employees will never achieve $1 million net worth through their job or their pension or their 401k or their whatever. And so then, go Google how much do you need to retire in any city in the United States, and it's ranked. If you go to the bottom quartile of cities in the US, cities like Huntsville, Alabama, and Jackson, Mississippi, South low cost of living cities, you still need $1 million net worth to retire comfortably and have $40,000 a year in passive income for the rest of your life. Well, if you need $1 million net worth to retire in Huntsville, Alabama, or Jackson, Mississippi, and 96% of employees will never achieve $1 million net worth, how is employment secure? How is employment a logical strategy for 24 out of 25 people? They're never going to be able to retire. And that's the whole reason you get a damn job in the first place, is because supposedly there's a system that's engineered to a happy ending called retirement. And I figured out in like 20 plus years ago, I already knew the math wasn't mathing for people. And I don't know why, I just did. And so I was never enticed. I never saw the appeal of like, give my whole life away for a paycheck that isn't going to get me where they're trying to convince me that it will. And so, I guess, in terms of what we do now, I've been evangelizing since 2019 when we started Entre. So in 2018, I sold my last business and I was essentially done. I was comfortable. I didn't need to sweat it. And I remember I had this moment where I was like, okay, 10 years ago, I was broke, injured jazz musician. I hurt my wrist. I couldn't even play a gig if I wanted to. I was in $500,000 in debt. I was facing my second divorce. I would have been homeless if my in-laws hadn't taken pity on me. And here I am. That was 2008. And here it was 2018, 10 years later. I sold my business. It wasn't my first successful business, but it was my first exit. I'm comfortably retired, ironically. At that time, I was 39 years old. And I did everything you're not supposed to do. I'm a high school dropout who became a jazz musician. But entrepreneurship changed the ending for me. And so I just was like, we live in a world where millions of people are doing a thing that they were told was the safe bet. But I'm living proof that there's a different bet you could place, that if you rise to the calling, anybody can win. And I just started sharing that message. And that in the digitally empowered world, and this was pre-AI, AI's changed it a whole nother order of magnitude in terms of what a solopreneur with not a lot of capital can get going. But even back then, I was like, this ain't your grandpa's entrepreneurship. You don't have to go get a ground lease and put up a building and stock shelves and hire employees anymore. Why isn't everybody got at least starting some sort of digital side hustle in their life so that within maybe a decade rather than 40 or 50 years, they can actually get to retirement rather than being disappointed when they discover too late that it was never going to get there. Like, it just seemed like a better paradigm for living. And I started sharing it and it caught on. And crazy enough, some of the data in your bio is a little aged. And we've had over 300,000 people buy some sort of training from us. We've helped over 25,000 people launch businesses. And I don't know, there's some other big numbers I could throw at you, but the bottom line is that people are resonating. And so let me fill out one more part of your question. Life design, which is the combination of personal development and I would say sort of like transformational psychology / life hacking, just like how to live a better life, paired with entrepreneurship, is trying to address what I see as an artificial schism in the market, where you have this whole category of industries that are like, lose weight, build muscle, get better sleep, heal, improve your marriage, become a better parent, conscious parenting, improve your communication, maybe work on your sales skills, reskill for a better job. Like, let's call it the whole category of self-improvement. And then you have a whole category of like business opportunities and program and entrepreneurship programs. But the fact is, if you want to be good at entrepreneurship, you just have to probably be a much better version of yourself than what's required to at least hang on and have a job. And that's, I'm not like trying to call anybody out, but I mean, like, you can be a fairly mediocre person and employment still has a place for you. And as long as you show up on time, they're actually legally obliged to pay you for something, for your time. Entrepreneurship is like 97% of people have like nothing to show for it, regardless of how much time they put into it. And then some smaller percent have an asymmetrical upside that is like me, you can be retired before 40. And what's the difference? How good a version of yourself are you? It's just a much higher standard. And by the way, high standards are really good for life. So why shouldn't we fuse the two and say, hey, let's start working on ourselves holistically. Let's get in better shape so we have more energy, so we can put in the extra hours that entrepreneurship requires. Let's put different fuel in our body. So that when we show up on camera, we have more vibrant, dynamic energy exuding from our face and we don't look haggard because we live off of fast food. And by the way, let's learn to polish our communication skills and fuse it with an understanding of human psychology, because not only might that help me be a persuasive sales guy on the internet, but it might also help me be a better husband to my wife and understand that everything is just human beings trying to get their needs met, and understanding what those needs are and how to meet them is not just going to help me sell stuff. It's also going to help me parent. And it's going to help me be a spouse. And it's going to help me be a kid, a child to my aging parents, right? Like, it all goes together. You know, how you do one thing is how you do everything. So if you want to make more money, become a version of self that's actually worth more such that the market will naturally compensate you better. I've never understood how people think they're going to do one without the other or the other without the one. We just fused it together and call it life design.
And you're killing it. Like if we look at Entre, I think I saw a stat was like crazy. Like you guys have like 63 times more success than any other program or similar programs have to do with increasing income. And it seems like you've got this 3 P's to success strategy. So can you tell us a little bit more about that? Because that philosophy seems to be really driving a lot of people to success.
Yeah. So the metric that you're referencing, and this is based on surveys that we did with our members, is that the average member of Entre who goes through the full life design process, which is not every one of our customers, right? You can buy a course from us and never even log in, or log in and never talk to us and never do any of our other stuff. But if you go through our full life design methodology, which, we can unpack some other time, it's a robust thing. It's kind of like a combination of going to like a trade school to learn a business and also going through like Tony Robbins' complete set of events, but also with some different nuances that we do and no one else does. But anyways, if you go through it, 63% of the people who go through it report earning a meaningfully higher level of income after 12 months in their life. The industry average for the home-based business or online business industry category, they like to say that it's 1%. I think it's actually much worse than that. I think it's like 1 basis point. I mean, it's bad. And so when we say we're 63 times better, we're referring to the fact that 63% of our people that do our full program have more money to show after 12 months versus 1%. But even that, I mean, we might be 6,300 times better if I'm right, that it's really much worse than 1%. But in any case, that's the stat. And what I think there's 2 reasons for it. There's one is that the version of self that people become through our process is a version of self that is naturally going to be better compensated in the market, whether it's through a business or their job. And by the way, some of those people are not statistics of people that build a business and bring in new income. Some of them are people who just start working on themselves, and people at work start to notice, and they either start closing more deals or they get a promotion or a raise or a new job opens up. Like it's just progress in life, even though it started as entrepreneurship. But so there's the transformational piece of like, I'm becoming a version of self who's naturally going to command a higher value in the market. There's also just the stickiness and the discipline and consistency that comes from getting results. And in entrepreneurship, and I'm sure you know this, and many of your listeners would know this, profit is like the last thing to happen in entrepreneurship. Like it's the lagging indicator that you've done a whole bunch of other things right before suddenly you're like, oh, I made a bunch of money, right? I mean, it might be 2 years before you see a bunch of profit come in. It doesn't mean that you weren't doing all the right things. It's just, that's like the last piece of the startup mode. And now you can scale and grow and all that stuff, right? And so, and I have a lot of experience now, 6 years and hundreds of thousands of people that I've gotten to oversee coming through an ecosystem saying, I want to change my life. I'm willing to do new things. Tell me what to do. And then I get to see whether or not they actually follow through or not, right? And so what I'll say is when you get people improving themselves holistically, the money may still be a year or 2 out, but hey, you know what? I just lost 10 pounds. And I'm feeling pretty good. And I noticed the last time I, put the moves on my wife, she was a little more receptive to me. I think I'm going to stick with this program. We just help a lot more people stick with it because you get holistic results long before, in most cases, you see profit. And so we help people lose weight. We help people quit smoking. We help people, keep their commitment to do date night every week with their wife when maybe they had let it go for the last 5 years. We just, because again, it's all who you become and it's all how you do everything.
Jeff, I love that. I thought you literally froze on me. So I was just trying to figure that out.
No, that was a timely freeze because I was actually done talking.
It's perfect. I love what you guys are doing. And I actually spent a lot of time looking at like your frameworks and what you're doing. And you help so many people with so many different problems and accomplish such phenomenal results. And there's so many things I'd like to dive into more about your strategies, your philosophies, your frameworks that help you accomplish this. But, as we get near the end, let me ask you this. Where can everybody go that wants more information to be able to learn more and maybe participate in your program so they can start sharing in some of that success that so many of your students are getting right now?
Yeah, I appreciate the question, obviously. So I just started a new YouTube channel, and the channel is called Life Design with Jeff Lerner. And if somebody just goes and searches Life Design Jeff Lerner on YouTube, it'll come up. That's actually the handle, is Life Design with Jeff Lerner. So you can find it. I don't even think it links anywhere right now. It has like 100 subscribers. I just started it like several weeks ago. And somebody might wonder why, because I have another YouTube channel that's got almost 100,000 subscribers. Why did I start a new YouTube channel? And also, why am I giving that link, not the other one, to your audience? The reason is because basically what I've decided, somebody that I look up to a lot said something as a business philosophy that I thought was really profound. He said, as the world, everybody knows, like, information is essentially becoming a commodity, right? Everybody can access any piece of information in the world thanks to ChatGPT or YouTube or whatever. So stop trying to charge for information. Information should be free. Transformation is what people should pay for if you're as a business, right? Like, don't charge people for a white paper on what to do. Give them the white paper, and then if you want to sell a program, have it be a guided, handheld, coached, facilitated, whatever, of doing what was in the white paper. And I think that was really great advice. So I want to basically give all the life design methodology away for free on my YouTube channel, and that's a new decision. I started doing that in my book. I published a book in 2022 that gave a lot of it away, but like, we're a research institution as much as we are a service company. And so a lot of this is actually creating feedback loops to get data from our customers and really try to get better and better and better at actually helping people improve their lives. And so we're far better now than we were when I wrote my book 3 years ago. And so I just want to give away everything that we've learned on the YouTube channel. And I'll also say this, my old YouTube channel, if somebody goes and looks at it, and this isn't about Jeff being autobiographical, this is like, there's a lesson here. The old YouTube channel was the subscriber base was largely built off of people that found me from running ads. And I used to run, at our biggest, I think we were doing 60 million ad impressions a month on YouTube. So like, what's that? 720 million ad impressions a year on YouTube, like 2 billion over 3 years. We were big advertisers. And we were running this ebook called The Millionaire Shortcut, which was is what it sounds like. It's sort of like the fastest, easiest, most predictable way to become a millionaire. And the premise was that actually starting a business is the fastest, easiest, most predictable way to become a millionaire. Getting a job is like the worst thing you could do, right? Although we're not saying if you have one, you can do both for a time. But in any case, what I found is the fact that so much of my audience was people that saw me in an ad for something called The Millionaire Shortcut meant that my whole YouTube channel ended up largely being subscribed to by people that basically wanted to get rich quick. And I am so the opposite of that. I'm like, I have it tattooed on my arm, the Jim Rohn quote, "Don't wish it was easier, wish you were better." And so, the get rich quick crowd doesn't really like that message. And so basically my engagement in my YouTube channel fell off a cliff, and YouTube decided that my audience didn't like me. And so I'm like, I'm just gonna start a new one. But I think there's a lesson in that. Like, when you're marketing, direct response marketing to acquire customers is one thing, but to not lose sight of the brand that is inadvertently or advertently being built as a consequence of that. And if there's misalignment with your actual message, you can end up wasting 6 years building a YouTube channel and having to start over. So
yeah,
there you go.
That's good stuff, Jeff. I appreciate you coming on with us today.
Hey man, this has been a blast. Let's do it again.
All right, so listen, if you're watching this, a couple things to do. Make sure that you go to YouTube right now and just look at Life Design with Jeff Lerner, and that's Lerner. And when you type it in, you'll find his channel right away. And again, what he's saying is, hey, I'm taking all this knowledge I've accumulated, all this knowledge through these years, and literally putting it out there for free. And all you have to do to get it is go to YouTube and check out Life Design with Jeff Lerner. But there's something else you should do as well. Make sure that you check out designyourlife.com, because if you go to designyourlife.com, you're able to kind of take a look at the frameworks, or you're able to tap into the podcast that Jeff has, blog posts, amongst videos, learn more about the programs and opportunities they have as well. So make sure that you check that out. Make sure you find Jeff on YouTube, and make sure you also visit designyourlife.com. Thank you very much for tuning in. Take care. Have a great day.